Hello, it's Debbie Gilbert from the Business Awards Show, and I'm also the founder of the Best Business Women Awards and the Best SME Awards. And today I am joined by Bronia Thomas. Bronia is the founder and CEO of the Global Lab Expert Group and also known as GLXG Limited. And she's been in business for 2 years now, coming up. And she was the gold winner for the Best Business Women Awards in the Best New Business category. Now, her business specialises in connecting patients with medical practitioners and laboratories in order to give them the opportunity to get the very best diagnostic tests available and help them on their healthcare journey. So we're going to talk to Bronia about what on earth made her set up this business, because it's so intriguing to me, and more about what the business actually does and her journey so far over the past 2 years and what role awards have played in that journey. So welcome, Bronia.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I'm really pleased to be with you today and having the chance to sort of tell my story.
Yes, so let's hear that story because you have a marketing background, Bronia.
I do.
So, what on earth made you set up this business? Because it is
Yeah.
so left field from marketing, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a complete step away, and yet there's huge commonality. So uh, the story really is, and I suppose for your listeners to sort of understand my background, I obviously don't sound British, so I am Canadian by birth and by raising, and came over to the UK in 2000. With the intent of landing in London, and which I did, and pursuing a career in marketing communications at advertising. My degree was in marketing communications for business. I also did a couple of side degrees in French and Spanish, so I was, able to speak three languages, and thought London was a really good point to start my career and have the access to Europe and therefore use languages. So that's where it started. And I had a fantastic career. I worked for some of the top world agencies. I worked across international global marketing brands and got put on a plane and flown around the world doing that for 25 years. And I had a son, and I got what I thought at the time was burnout, which you get was sort of from traveling around the world and raising a young son and doing everything that one does when you are pursuing career. And I've always been very ambitious in sort of not to ever own my own company. In fact, that wasn't ever the intention, just in terms of my own pursuits, both academic and career. And I became unwell. And I discovered, and through no criticism, I think this is an important caveat to make on this podcast. This is no criticism of the NHS, where I'm based in the UK. If you've got international listeners, it is just healthcare systems around the world have different ways of testing, have different approaches to illness. And if you fit neatly in a box, they can diagnose you. And if you don't fit neatly in a box, there's a lot of questions that are often asked. And so I was passed from specialist to specialist and didn't get anywhere. And what I began was what a lot of people in the UK and around the world do when they don't get the answers they need and they realize something's going on, I started my own research. I've always been a self-starter anyway, and I started my own research. And what ended up happening, without going into what the diagnosis was, etc., but I eventually got diagnosed through a London doctor that was working with a German laboratory at the time, and discovered that I could get answers, and I could get answers that I hadn't got. Now, I had to pay for it, and that's a whole other story in and of itself, because private healthcare isn't accessible to all. And that's one of the challenges of my business. But what I discovered was that I was now part of a huge group of patients that are out there that are looking for answers because they haven't found what it is to get them better. And to kind of fast forward, because I would then had to take time out from my work, I then entered, I got treatment in London, but I got international support as well from the various doctors and clinics and laboratories I was working with. And it was really, do you know what? Life sometimes just brings these opportunities and you don't really realize it. I never intended to end up where I am. I was going to have the career I had until retirement, just progressing within that industry. But what happened was I was unwell, and I got to know the doctors who were treating me. And one of them one day in the clinic in London turned around and said, you know what, we could do with your help. Would you mind helping us? And it was on marketing, communications, and business for their clinic.
Okay.
And that began a journey of me actually getting into that vertical sector, which was private healthcare, being introduced through a couple of lovely men that I still work with that are one's originally from South Africa, but lives here in London. One's British. There's a whole mix of international people I've met within this private healthcare industry. And what ended up happening was I bounced between. So I started a freelance business while I was unwell, realizing I still needed income. And I had a couple of contacts, and I then got a lovely opportunity as I was getting better to start lecturing. So bit by bit, the career I'd left behind, I was able just to keep myself. I was trying to pay bills, and what I started doing was I started just putting feelers out there and saying, yes, I'm here and I can do some marketing communications work from home. I was doing virtual work before COVID hit. So actually COVID, I transitioned through quite nicely. And what ended up happening was that I found that this field of private healthcare were brilliant at private healthcare. Doctors know what they're doing for the most part. Doctors know what they're doing. Patients do most of the time find them. Laboratories are there doing what they do really well. But what I found was a gap of the entire skill set I had, which was how do you market? How do you communicate? How do you connect people? Because although it sounds terrible to say, let's market healthcare, all that marketing actually is it's joining the dots. You have a product or a service, and so the private doctors out there, the laboratories that have answers, the patients that need communications, the social media groups that exist out there to support patients. There's a lot of patient charity groups out there, from long COVID to infectious diseases to cancer groups, whatever that is. There's an enormous network that has self-started, whether they are charitable or whether they are profit driven. But what happens is so often they don't talk to one another. And from my background of how do you get a message out? How do you engage with people? Well, all I started doing was turning it on myself of I was the patient and I wasn't getting communicated to, and I didn't know where to go, and I didn't have the answers. And I ended up working with, because I didn't do this all on my own. I don't think any business out there does do it. We are in the same way that it takes a child to, a village to raise a child, as they say. I think it takes a village, a community to raise a business. So I cannot stand on my own 2 feet and say I did this completely alone, because at each point in my journey, there have been many people that have taught me, mentored me, guided me, given me information, worked with me, collaborated. And out of all of that, rose my business as a freelancer. And I did that for about 3 years, working within this private healthcare industry. And then a conversation and an opportunity raised itself at the end of 2023, and I opened 2024. And what it enabled me to do was it enabled me to take everything I had learned over those past 3 years, plus the career background, and open a business that went originally, I mean, gosh, everything was from my kitchen table. You know, think about COVID when we were all joking about wearing business shirts on the top and then pajamas and slippers on the bottom. I was already doing that and continued it. So I was able from April, it was about April, it was April 1st, 2024 that I officially opened. And I already had a small team of people. They were all part-timers. They were people that I had worked with before. And I was saying to, I've got a great friend, David, who runs his own agency. And I said, can you help me set my website and my URL up? And I had an accountant down the road. And I said, can you help me set my business up from a corporate side? So I didn't do it all on my own. I was reaching out and using the feelers. And I think that's one of the big things that probably any of the listeners or people who own their own business will say is you reach out to those people that are familiar to you and those connections that you have, and you start asking those questions which say, how do I do this? What do I do next? Because I had run businesses. I had been a board director. I had some fantastic roles and privileges in the career I'd had to date. So I had felt fairly senior. But then you get to the point of opening your business, you think, I may be senior, but I have absolutely no idea how to set this business up properly. There's always been a legal department or there's been a finance department. So you learn as you go through force of need and by asking the right questions or until you get the answer you need. And what formed was a business from my kitchen table with remote workers, a couple of them locally here in the UK. Then I met another one through a connection that was in Austria. And she said, well, but I'm in Austria. I said, well, don't worry about it. I actually need a a base in the EU. I also used, we have the everlasting impact of Brexit on business and the challenges that creates. And this business is global that I've set up. So being based in the UK produced other restrictions. And I set up a Portuguese base with a couple of connections there, including a family member who he was actually at the awards event. He's my father. And he had spent a late career in Portugal. So I was able to say, do you have a lawyer? Do you have a finance person out there that I can help set up a business there? So these connections helped form what the business I have today. And the business, as you introduced it, so thank you for that, is really a reflection of everything I learned career-wise, everything I learned while I was getting better on how to resource and find those answers. And what I'm in the process of creating, it's fully functional now, but nothing is static and it's continuing to grow. And I've got so many ideas and plans for 2026. It's now just about making them happen. But what I've now got is I've got a business that effectively I can say, bar a couple of countries where I haven't yet worked out the logistics. One of them is Australia because of flight time. I have a business where and to your listeners so they actually understand what it is. I have test kit boxes. This is common. Many labs do this, but I'm trying to do it slightly differently. I have test kit boxes that I hold in various locations in Europe and here in the UK. And I have a fantastic laboratory and facilities that I have access to. A great partnership and other ideas in terms of partnerships for this year moving forward. And I have access to all the tests that one could possibly need from a hospital, from a GP, but also the really unusual ones, the infectious diseases, the do I have long COVID, the did the COVID vaccine impact me, the cancers, the heavy metals, the molds, any environmental toxicity. We're looking at microplastics now because we've got that machine coming online this year. So really relevant topical stuff that all of us can relate to. All of us in our lives know or have experienced ourselves illness or somebody unwell with something. And hopefully the healthcare system that you are in, wherever that geography is helping you. But if it doesn't, where do you go? And so what I've got is I've got a lab and a network now where pretty much we can find the test you need. And we're aiming. I only will work, and I've got a vetting process with the top quality, top caliber, etc. In terms of lab and diagnostics, and that's all about something called sensitivity and specificity, which is how accurate your testing is. And we send the test kits around the world, and the patients get them to their home or to their clinic, and then they do the test, and it could be blood, urine, stool, nothing fancy. It's just anything biological. And then it's sent back, and then the results are sent through. And what that's doing is I have filled a gap, which I didn't even know existed until I experienced it myself. So, what I say to people when I meet doctors is I operate in the space in between. I am not a medical professional. Many of my team are not medical professionals. They're financiers, they're organizers, the logistics, they're customer service people. I have a fantastic team, but none of us have a medical qualification. But we work with those that do and that are at the top echelon of their trade. So they have knowledge that I could never hope to have. But what I've done is I've gone, well, you're a lab and you're amazing, but do you know how to get patients? Because patients are looking for you, but they didn't even know you existed. And doctors are hunting around for tests that to try and find out what's going on with their patients. And sometimes the main testing that they use is inadequate. So how do they find you? So that's the network. It's a connection that I'm creating. And bit by bit, across the world, where we've done Indonesia, we've done Hong Kong, we're doing all over Europe, we do the United States, we've done Canada, we can hit Latin America depending on the country. And so it's a global network of both doctors and patients to find the right test.
I think it's amazing. So just to clarify, if I'm not feeling well and I'm not getting the right advice that's getting me better from my doctor, I can come onto your website
Yep.
and I can order some tests through your website. So I don't
Or
need a doctor's letter to do
no, 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 because the world of private healthcare, and this is one of the challenges, is private healthcare to a great degree is unregulated, and I
Yeah.
think that's a very big challenge because you get mainstream healthcare services, I'm using the NHS because I went through the NHS, but
Yeah.
remember I'm from Canada, so Canada's no different,
Mm.
France is no different, so this is not to malign anybody
No.
within the NHS at all. But the NHS reached a point with me where they said, we've done all the testing. We can't find what's wrong with you. It must be. And they named various conditions and syndromes. But a condition and a syndrome is quite often just a group of symptoms that they can't place an actual diagnosis on. And so they treat the syndrome to make you feel comfortable rather than actually saying what's the root cause and let's get you better. And what I was determined was, what is the root cause? How do I get better? I refuse. This is part of who I am, and is I refuse to accept you've just got to live with pills.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes happens, but I didn't want that to just be the end. I was in my 40s, and I thought I'm too young to just be on pills for the rest of my life. There's got to be a way to get better. So, yeah, what one thing that everybody has to be cautious of is that vetting process, and that's the challenge. How do you vet? And that's what I'm trying to establish with a group of doctors: is what is the standard? Because the only way a standard is considered a gold standard is if the WHO apply and say this is the gold standard, or if a country itself says, right, the NHS is going to accept these as the correct testing. In the private medical field and the private laboratory field, it then becomes a little bit of a free-for-all, and that's the concerning thing. So the clinics and the labs I work with are all in their own country, government approved. The laboratory I work is privately owned but government approved in Germany and other locations. So I think vetting and solidifying your base is incredibly important, because then I can now provide to the doctors and patients the reassurance and say, yeah, if you come to me, I'm not the expert, but what I can do is I connect you. So when you
Mm.
said, can they just go on the website? Yes, but it's not. I started, and this is the interesting thing, is how business evolves. Is I started as, yes, I'm just customer care and logistics. I'm just posting test kits. But now what I'm doing is, if a patient comes and goes, I don't know what test I need.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
right. I know I'm sick. I've got these symptoms. A friend told me to. I just had this last week over Christmas, and I spoke to this woman over Christmas. And I have to always say, look, I'm not a medical expert. Tell me what's going on, and I will pass that information on to somebody that can help you, which I have. And so we've now got the laboratory and a qualified practitioner supporting this female patient in identifying the tests because I've
Hmm.
made that connection. And then when she's ready, she will come and she can place the order that she wants.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Really, really good. I think it's amazing. And I think, I won't go on about my own personal experience, but I can completely identify because it happened to me about
Yep.
15 years ago and I ended up going down the private route myself,
Yep.
and met with a Belgian doctor actually in London, who did loads of tests that the NHS just either can't afford to do or just weren't prepared to do, and to get to the root cause of what was going on with me. Um, so I can absolutely see why this is such an important service for people, 100%. And what comes across to me, about you is you're very detailed driven. And that is such an important quality in an entrepreneur, is to, that you have gone to the nth to find the best people and to have a credible process in order to select the right laboratories and the right medical practitioners to be on your website. So that doesn't come just like that, does it? I mean, it must have been
No,
a journey.
it is. It is. And this is where, interestingly, going back to your first statement, how do you go from marketing into this
Mm,
healthcare? What It's very easy to look at marketing, and I've joked about it over the years. Yeah, I work for sort of the coloring in department. We get out our Crayola crayons and we create a logo. That really is the end bit. It's a little bit like the icing on the cake. What marketing is actually about is understanding your audience,
mm,
understanding all of that data, whatever that data is that a company has, and I lecture in this topic at university, and so you get a camp of cynical students every year that go, yeah, you're just trying to sell me stuff. But if you actually look at everything in the world, we need information. If you're going to go buy a new car, you want that brochure, you want that website to tell you the specification of the car so that you can make an informed decision. And so we've all, or most of us listening, will have purchased a car, and we will know that important decision into our lives. Yes, sometimes it comes down to the aesthetic. What color? Do we like the style? Do we like its feel? Absolutely. But it also comes down to mileage and fuel economy, and do we want electric or not? And all of those decisions. And you can only make those decisions if you're given the right information. And I think, yeah, this detail, it comes from my background.
mm.
I there Marketing is a very big sweeping statement. It's a bit like saying you're a chef. Well, you can be many different types of chef, or a car. You can have many different types of car, and the aspect of marketing I was involved with was the very business marketing communications. So how do you communicate complex information in a simple way? And so yes, I probably was attracted to that industry because I'm detail. But what I like doing is telling a story. And the telling of a story then comes out, hopefully, and there are many improvements I still want to make to website and communications that I'm doing, but it is about storytelling, so that then I don't ever want anybody, whether it's a clinic or a patient, to feel like they've been sold to. I want them to feel like they've been supported. And that support quite often ends up being free advice. So I've spoken to many people before, and I've said, maybe this isn't the right, maybe you should be going down this route first. And I think this is where it's interesting, the role I'm playing with my team. And I have to give credit to the team, because I've got people on the front line, even as we're recording this episode right now, answering emails, helping people, helping clinics, etc. And all of it is about signposting. That's what we're doing. So we're signposting, but what I'm discovering out of that is that doctors are saying, well, can you recommend me another doctor I could talk to? So we're now recommending to doctors. There are some very interesting, there's people saying, well, can I have some training in this area? So heavy metals, and mold and toxicity is a big topic in today. We're realizing how toxic our bodies are. but there's not a lot of practitioners out there who understand that. So if they get test results or they suspect that, how do they understand it and then help their patient? So I'm now putting in some training programs for doctors. And who would have thought that I'm, this is what's fascinating is I'm now developing training programs for doctors because I'm not qualified, but I hold more information than they do by connecting the right people to them to train them. So it's a very, very interesting journey I'm on, and I'm loving it. Yeah,
Amazing. It's like there's lots of ideas sprouting as you go along.
yeah,
So AI is impacting every industry.
yes.
So how is AI impacting your business and how are you utilizing it?
Okay, so this it's a very interesting question because yes, and both in my AI is impacting everywhere, and I, like everybody, am learning. I don't think there are few probably outside Silicon Valley and the confines of some of the UK AI infrastructure networks that are being created that really know what's going on. I think we're all dabbling in it and all trying to get to grips with it. But I think in order to answer your question, there's probably a couple of stories I can tell you. The first is that the way we need to all look at AI is that it's not just Chat GPT.
Hmm.
That tends to be the first thing that we all think of, and Sam Altman has built a very good brand in that way. If I look at it from a marketing perspective, everybody sort of, many people look at it that way. But AI is actually a collection, an enormous collection
Hmm.
of intelligent applications that are being built and programmed as we speak. And we know, if from listening to the news, we know that California is going up against China, and it's a big race. But then you consider the other countries, and then there's a number of other factors to be considering. And I'll bring this back to healthcare shortly, but I think it's probably good to just start with an overview of sort of my view on AI and the reading I've been doing and the learning and the lecturing. Um, and if you have a look at every other country, they're really going to struggle because AI requires enormous warehousing capacity. It requires enormous energy. It requires enormous brain investment. So you need the people on the ground who are technically savvy to be able to build it. And so what you've got the start of, and we're already quite advanced, Western and Chinese dominance, or American and Chinese dominance in the AI space. France apparently tried to start considering building one, but just literally infrastructure, people, etc. So if you break down every country in the world, for them to create their own AI is going to be a big challenge. And so there's a lot of debate that's happening online. And I went to a very interesting talk in Soho House in London about a month ago, where somebody who'd worked on DeepL for 10 years, he's written a book, and I can pass you the book reference after if anybody's interested. Fascinating man. And he is now working for the UK government on AI security, because one of the things, as we know, without sort of making any political comment, is that the race is meaning that we are racing so fast globally on developing AI that some of the guardrails, and we use the word guardrail to imply the rules and regulations and data protection and all those things that are important to protect the individual and to protect even international security, not just individual security, aren't necessarily being put in place. And so interestingly, your listeners might be interested that UK is one of the leading countries that's working on AI security and guardrail development. Now, where this plays into healthcare is it's a very interesting challenge. And I actually have some friends, literally, they are coffee friends who work within the NHS. And we've had round the table coffee discussions on AI within the NHS and within healthcare. And any government organization within the UK and internationally is really grappling with this challenge of how do you embrace AI to support healthcare and infrastructure, particularly given that many healthcare systems, not just the NHS, are struggling with money. So how do you embrace it? Because it could make time and cost savings. And yet at the same time, the minute you hand over data, and this is what we all need to be aware of, it's not going into a UK protected pool unless it's a closed AI UK owned system.
Mm.
It's going into the American predominantly AI network. So one of the challenges I've got is I have been approached multiple times already, particularly by a very interesting man in California who is a doctor. He runs a clinic in the US, he runs a clinic within Silicon Valley, and he is very connected to the AI space in healthcare. And he is building a platform at this present time with a huge investment in the US. And the platform is to take diagnostics and put them into AI and allow AI to start reading and developing and understanding them so that you could, in theory, end up, here's the vision of the future. It's not even, it's already being tested, but it's not there yet. The vision of the future is that you could go get your blood test and those results go into AI, and AI gives you the results, and AI then diagnoses you, and AI then faster. And it's already being proved in X-rays for breast cancer, and they've been trialing it in lung, that AI is as quick or sometimes quicker than the best technical consultant in terms of reading early breast cancer or lung diagnostics. So there's some really incredibly positive moves that are being made within this field. And being the person I am and coming from a very marketing way, this marketing background is digital. It's also social media. So I always had to be and stay on the edge of things. Even if I can't do it myself, I've got to know enough to be able to talk about it and be informed. And this is part of what I lecture with a university, is this constant movement of change, particularly in the digital and social form, and now in AI. And where I'm fascinated by how you take a business such as a laboratory and even the work I'm doing and how you put AI into it. And I had a conversation 3 nights ago with so over Christmas, over the New Year period, with this doctor in the US, in California. And what he is proposing is that his platform in the US starts to spread out across Europe. Now, why is that important? It's important because you do not want an AI diagnostic model to be only built on US patients and the blood of US patients. Otherwise, it is not a globally representative AI sample. And this is one of the challenges. You pick culture, you pick language, you pick any field that any of your listeners are involved in. If AI is only fed the data from one country, it becomes very biased. Yeah. And so what we need is an unbiased future if AI is going to be as helpful in the medical field as possible. But in it is inherent problems and risks, and I won't go into it deeply because it's a podcast in its own right. But the risks are, how do you, so far I can assure all your listeners, in case they're concerned, so far, certainly of what I'm aware of, my network is not feeding data into AI. But if it does, how do we do that in a safe, secure manner, given that the acceleration of AI is that it is leaping over the boundaries of data protection? So how do you put data in and for it to remain anonymous? But actually it can't be anonymous, because Debbie, if you want to know your results and you want to know what's wrong with you, I also need to know that your name is Debbie Gilbert. I need to know your date of birth. I need to know where you live. I need to know any of the other data that you input in order for me to give you a health picture back of what might be going on with you that's relative to your geography, your lifestyle, and your genetics. So as soon as you start getting into blood, genetics, lifestyle, etc., you're crossing all sorts of data boundaries that for the EU, particularly for many, many decades, has been very vigilant about protecting. And yet if we don't cross that boundary, then what we end up is with an AI medical software tool that is, and I'm not saying we, meaning GLXG, I mean globally, we end up with a tool or access that is very limited. So I'm having some very interesting conversations. I've got some more this year, because what I have come onto the radar, which is really exciting for me, I've come onto the radar with the laboratory and the people I'm working with, and California would like to work with us, which is amazing. I mean, that statement alone is fantastic. I would have never said this a year ago, but how do we do it in a safe, responsible way? Because I've also invested tens of thousands of pounds over the past couple of years in protecting every patient data to the highest possible security.
Mm.
So this, yeah, that's where we're at with the AI. It is on the cusp of, and I think by 2027 I will have many more answers. 2026 is a year of discovery.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's just a minefield, isn't it? Let's be honest. It
It
is
is. It
incredible.
is.
So let's talk about awards. So,
Okay.
you won the Gold Award for Best New Business, which is quite a coveted title. We get a lot of entries for that category.
Yeah. I
And
saw there were a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and we don't shortlist that many people. I think there were about 8 or 9 of you that got shortlisted out of hundreds, literally hundreds of entries. It's one of our biggest categories, new business. And I think it's because people recognize the fact that winning an award quite early on can be quite important in the development of a business. So tell me what made you enter, what was your thought process, and how you found the whole experience.
Okay. So I absolutely take responsibility for instigating it. But I then fully 100% blame my team, but thank them for what then happened. So coming from the background that I have, I know that storytelling is so important to communicate who you are and what you do. And for clients I've worked with over the years, entering awards was always a big part of what we did every year to promote ourselves. So, to any business out there that hasn't entered awards before, I would say don't shy away from them from a lack of confidence or feeling like you aren't good enough, etc. Because all that an award is telling a story,
Mm.
and it's telling your story. And why it's important to tell your story is all the advertising in the world. I could spend money every day of every week putting up social media ads, printed ads, advertising all over the place. And yes, I would probably get some impact and business back. And that's how brands do it. That's why we see adverts everywhere, because they say we need to be seen, and they do. But more impactful is you only see the advert if you actually understand what the story is, or you get converted if you understand who they are and what they do. And so I turned to my team and I said, you know what? We have got this really cool story to tell. Let's go and start to enter some awards. And my plan was, if I'm completely honest, to enter maybe 3 or 4, thinking, you know what? Even if we get shortlisted,
Mm.
or long listed, we don't even have to be a finalist. We don't have to win. We will have enough. And I think that's the other thing is, even if you don't win, there is still a story that you entered, that you had a story to tell, that you got nominated or you were finalist, etc. And so we were going to enter a lot, but we actually got busy. I'll be honest. We got busy and we had to prioritize. And I will say we prioritized your entry. We felt that it was the one that seemed to have the best caliber of status, that you had the most recognition within the field. And so, kudos to you in terms of the story that you told, and the promotion that you do. Is we were attracted to your award category in terms of time investment, because it takes a lot of time
Yeah.
to write an award entry. It's a job in and of itself. And so we had to make some choices. So we shed a couple, which I won't name. Maybe one day we will approach those again. But we chose yours. And at that point, there were many categories that we could have gone into. There were maybe 3 or 4, let's say. And this is the point where I blame my team. I didn't realize that what the team were entering was that particular category. So I helped write the entry, but then I have a wonderful team of 3 people, all have different roles, but they all have some writing ability. And we pulled it together, and I proofed it, and we submitted it. And I said, yes, that story matches. And of course, as you know, we have to submit our finance. And so we submitted the numbers. And when we found out we were nominated as a finalist, even that, I can't tell you the genuine surprise Genuine surprise and then complete joy that all of us had. We were so excited because and I'll go on to sort of mention about the gold in a second, but I think what you as an interviewer need to realize, and also again, listeners, if you at all have ever thought about doing it, is to know that you're picked means that your story had something.
Mm.
And it's not to say, I think I never considered myself, and in many respects, I still don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I consider myself that had a career and a background and a drive and a great opportunity. And I just went, you know what? Let's just go for it. What I consider myself is that I walked through a door that was opening. Um, and telling that story of what I found on the other side of the door when I walked through it was easy because it's what I do every day. Knowing and having the recognition that somebody thought, you know what, that is a really good story was amazing. And so I said to my team when we went to the evening, which was a fantastic awards ceremony, so thank you for that. I said, do you know what? It doesn't matter if we don't win. Let's just go out. We have very few team meetings because we're still an SME as a business. We may be global, we may be doing huge things, but we're a team of 9 people. Not everybody's full time. We're only a team of 9, and we're covering this entire globe with service. Um, and I said, let's just get together and have a good time. So I flew a couple of people in, people came up on the train, and we had a fantastic evening. To then be nominated, and I know a lot of people were like, oh my goodness, I didn't expect to win. The videos, somebody caught my face,
You were a bit like,
it was complete shock
yeah.
because um I have a lot of confidence in talking about subject matter. And I love the conversation that we've had today. And hopefully, some of the stuff that I've imparted has been of interest to your listeners. But I don't consider myself somebody that is, I've never considered that what I've created is of a gold standard. I want it to be, absolutely. And I want the people who use our service for it to be gold. But to win it, it felt like validation that we were on the right track. And I think
Yeah.
that to kind of answer one of the questions you said earlier about how has awards impacted us, we're still in that process of telling our story. So
Mm.
how we're using it, I can't say right now that it's driven this many more sales or this
No.
much more impact. But what it's done is it's widened our ability to tell a story to a group of people of, you know what, not only do we do this, not only do we do that, not only can we do this for you, but you know what, we were recognized in 2025 as being
Yeah.
the best new business. And those stamps, those stamps of authority, those stamps of awards, those accreditations, whatever that is, whatever industry you're in, matter because it immediately imparts trust,
Mm.
um, greater trust and greater belief that, okay, the person I'm dealing with must know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And in return, what it's given to me and definitely my team is confidence.
Mm.
It's given me, when I stood there on the night holding the award, I think it felt overwhelming. It was sort of, and I can't even remember what I said in that post video chat that I did in the room that you took us off to afterwards. But what I do know is in the days and weeks that followed, and I can see it where I'm sitting right now, having the awards sitting here at home. Home is still HQ. It won't be. We will have a formal office soon, I hope. But it's a validation that I'm doing something that matters and that I'm on the right track.
Yeah, and I think that's such a key part of this journey that you're on because, our judging panel, and I don't say this lightly, they are all incredible business experts, all of them. I mean, I'm very fussy who is on my judging panel. And if you look back at your judges' comments, it was so lovely to read that, what they said about you. And you literally lifted yourself off that page. And people really got a sense of who you are and what this business does and who it helps. And I think it's quite unique in what you're doing as well. And that would have definitely piqued their interest because anyone who's doing something that's slightly different, more revolutionary, but has also put a lot of thought into the planning side and the execution, It's so important and in running a business. And I think that came across in your entry for sure. So well done.
Thank you.
So let's finish off by just talking around those challenges that you may have had over the last couple of years. And I'm sure there's been many trials and tribulations, wins, and lots of lovely things as well. But maybe share one or two things with our listeners who also may be on that early stage journey of, a bit of advice to what you think could have helped you had you heard that advice a couple of years ago.
Um, yeah, okay. Lots of things come to mind. So let's see if I can prioritize. I think the number one thing that I've learned, um, and again, part of this is my training of decades having to work with many clients and move to their moving deadlines and whims. When you're in a service industry, you have to, and I'm talking about my previous career, you have to be responsive to the customer. And without realizing it, I carried that through. But what I've learned, if I look back, and I've spent time over Christmas, here we are, first day back for many, many people today, with the new year. And I think what I've reflected on over the Christmas period is flexibility. So that's the first word I would say is flexibility. You may start out with an idea of what you want your business to be, and I did. Um, but be prepared that it won't look the same in a year's time or 2 years time or 3 years time. And the reason for that, the only reason, and I think that's the way to survival in those early years. They always talk about the first 2 to 5 years being really challenging for any new business. And I think it's because you're finding your feet. You might start with a great idea, or you might start with, let's be really fundamentally basic. I started doing this to pay the mortgage, keep the roof over my head, etc. It was an opportunity, but it was also an opportunity. It was an opportunity in business, but it was also an opportunity to pay bills, to keep paying bills. So wherever you start, whatever your starting point is, whether you have money or whether you don't, whether you're doing it to pay bills or whether you're doing it because you want to change in direction, be flexible, be willing to change, be open to those new ideas, be aware that the world is ever changing. And I think we all know that. We all can turn on the news and we can see what's going on politically in terms of geopolitics, what's happening in terms of the tech space, like we've just been talking about AI. But unless you keep aware of what's going on and its impact on business, you will suffer. They often talk about the biggest businesses, and we can name some in the UK that have gone down over the past decade. The number one cited reason, often why they go under, other than financial mismanagement, is that they didn't stay abreast of what customers wanted. And if you don't stay abreast, so that would be is stay topical, stay relevant, and don't be afraid of that technological change. We're all facing it. We're all, I'm opening up the computer every day and I'm seeing new stuff happening with AI and what can be done, and I'm having to manage it even within my team. How much content do I let the team write and then put through AI, and how much do I say I will not allow that? So a lot of what we do is still 100% personal, and there's only a very little bit that sometimes I say, yeah, you can kind of round this using a chat GPT or a cloud. So be very careful of the AI tech that you're using. Keep it personal. So I would say be flexible, keep it personal, because personal and real are going to be incredibly important in the future, given that already our kids are watching videos and it's AI generated. So what's real, what isn't? Stay real, stay personal, be flexible. And I think the other one, which is quite a boring one, but I've used a lot of financial, legal, technical support. And what I would do is build your infrastructure of your business from the start. And that's so easy to say because it sounds like, well, of course I need to do that. But what we tend to do as business owners is we start working. And what we do is we prioritize the customer, which is absolutely the right thing to do. And we say, Yeah, yeah, I'll get that document done later. Yeah, yeah, I'll get that contract done later. Yeah, yeah, I'll agree with my supplier X and Y later. So, whatever those agreements are that you have in place, we tend to often go in the early days on gentleman's agreement or I'll get round to it. But if you don't allow yourself time to set your infrastructure up, I've got somebody who's helped me enormously in recent months, and he said, what businesses tend to do from the start is they go and build a beautiful sandcastle, and then the waves start to come in. And the waves start to come in, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, my turret's falling down, or this is falling down. And what then people do is they go then go, oh yeah, I should have built a moat. I should have built a moat and I should have built, and you think about those childhood building as the sea's coming in, what we tend to build to protect that sandcastle as long as we can. So, what I would say to anybody listening as well is if you haven't built all those bits that make your moat, make that one of your priorities for 2026 because it's about scheduling the time to do it. I have to do that because I do tend to leave it otherwise. I schedule the time, and I think that's the other learning. So flexibility, personal, um, being open to change, and building that moat in terms of infrastructure to protect you.
I love the sandcastle analogy. I think it's great. I will remember that. That's
Well,
really
it's
good.
borrowed. It's borrowed from somebody
Yeah,
so credit
that's-
to
yeah.
to him, but it's a good one. I like it as well.
I think you've shared some really good advice there. So we will round our discussion off today with that. And I just want to thank you for your time today and for everything you've shared. You've shared a lot of information that I know our listeners will um, glean some great tips and details from. So, if you've listened to today's episode, we will make sure that Bronia's details are in the show notes, including her website, and I'll get her to send me the details of the book that she mentioned, and we'll put that into the show notes as well. Bronia, I am sure we're going to be seeing you win many more awards in the future, and well done for what you've already accomplished, and I wish you every success on your business journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.